At the last election, we were treated to, I think, signs of things to come, which was the independent Muslim MPs who were elected in their constituencies on the pro-Palestine position, which isn't really very closely tied to British politics.
How mad is that in and of itself?
Yeah, it's kind of mad.
Why should that ever be the case?
Yeah, they're exactly the people you'd expect. Shaukat Adam, Iqbal Mohammed, Adine Hussein, Ayub Khan, and Jeremy Corbyn. So, like I said, the 5 Muslim MPs.
It's funny that they're not actually often, that sometimes they are, but often they're not actually Palestinian or even Arab. No. They could be Pakistani or Bangladeshi or anything, but I think the Muslim thing alone makes them...
I think they might all be Pakistanis.
Right.
But it's very worrying to me that British people who are voting are going out and voting based on a pro-Palestine stance when we need to be looking after our country, don't we? And we need MPs that are going to represent us, the people, in our needs in this country.
Well, that kind of is the point, actually, because you use the British people and our, and so you've got a constituency of British people to whom we belong. Do we belong to the same constituency as these guys? Because if you look
they will have been elected by, largely by Pakistanis or just Muslim people.
Yeah, the Muslims. And this makes me wonder, well, actually, are they an us? Are they a we? Are they an our? Because, I mean, the first sort of things they started coming out about and talking about are, for example, they're against the proposal to ban first cousin marriages, something that wasn't really necessary in Britain because people didn't marry their cousins here. I'm in favour of it. So I would think British
banning or first cousin.
Well, I mean, I think you can already guess actually, you know. But you can also guess where Iqbal Mohammed falls on that, and so it's like, right, this isn't just a regular policy question. It's like, you know, do we want higher taxes or lower taxes to fund the NHS? Well, that's something that we can all have an opinion on. This is something that's distinctly cultural and foreign, I would say. To Britain, and of course this is a sort of thing that Iqbal Mohammed got up and started talking about. And then the next thing, of course, is the proposed funding from Britain for an airport in Mirpur, which is the backwards area of Pakistan,
all places
where most of our immigrants come from. They say there are over 1 million British Kashmiris living in the United Kingdom, and who would benefit directly from an addition to the neighbouring regions of Jhelum, Dina, and Gujarat. And they would also gain from improved international transport connections. This would serve the vibrant worldwide Kashmiri diaspora. Right.
Good. Good.
Going back to the us and our. Are these British people? You know, I mean, it's signed by...
Well, here it's not. But and then the funny thing is Zara Sultana had just, I think she'd called out somebody about the expansion of Heathrow.
Yes.
She didn't want that because that was against net zero. Yet here she is saying, build this airport. And it's just the hypocrisy of it all. But it does worry me that there are a lot of liberal white traitors.
Well, like Stella Creasy, who signed this.
Right. And like the lady, the headmistress who... banned the Easter bonnet parade in the Hampshire school and the Easter celebration. She was a white, you know, I'm assuming liberal because I don't think it would be a conservative that did that. So
the point is, I think that when this kind of proposal is on the table, when this kind of obvious ethnic interest is on the table, we can safely say, right, these aren't people who consider themselves to be British. They consider themselves to be Pakistani and Kashmiri, and they're trying to advance their agenda in that country. So when, for example...
That sort of thing is the definition of being a fifth columnist, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when you know, Samantha here, I'm sure is a very nice and well-meaning person, and they point out, well, the following British MPs are campaigning on behalf of their constituents in Pakistan. It's like, okay, but I don't really think they think their constituents are British people, right? It seems that the revealed preference...
If they were honest, if they were perfectly honest about it.
Just their actions. Yeah. The revealed actions show that, no, they're campaigning for Pakistan. So I think they view themselves as Pakistani MPs in Britain rather than British MPs who are doing the best.
And also going back to them wanting the cousin marriage to continue, that actually does put a lot of strain on our NHS when they have babies from those cousin marriages that end up having birth defects.
Yeah. No, you're really, really serious ones.
Really serious.
Massive problem. What about the angle of let them marry their first cousins as much as they want? so that they remain
okay,
sort of docile and...
Well, they're not.
As long as we don't have to fund it
Right.
through the NHS, because that's the thing. I think the stats were, it was insane, like the proportion of Pakistani children that are born with these defects because their parents are cousins versus kids born with birth defects to British couples, you know.
Yeah, aren't they something like 35% of all the birth defects, despite being 6% of the population?
Yeah, that's it. I didn't want to say that stat without it written down just in case, but that's what I remembered.
Yeah, that's what I remember too. I might be wrong, fact check me on that. But
what a disastrous stat that is.
Yes, it's crazy.
Sickening, not just like a bit odd and like, okay, it's like, that's terrible. That's sickening.
It's where you would think that the state does have an ethical duty to step in and do something about it, right? As in, you know, Keir Starmer came out and just flatly denied that there was going to be a ban on first cousins and marriages. It's like, yeah, but that would really protect children from being consanguineous. It would be better. Anyway, so the next thing, and this is one of the things that the Americans keep picking up on, is that all of our institutions appear to just be Islamic at this point. Right? For example, on the BBC, here's like an hour of Eid Live, where they're introducing Eid al-Fitr prayers from the Bradford Central Mosque. This is 6% of the population. Like the Muslims are actually a very small percentage of British population, and yet they're given incredible status in this country, which is fooling the Americans. I've just been over to America, and the Americans are like, so how many Muslims do you guys have? Oh, less than 10%. And they're like, what? Really? How have you got less than 10%, fewer than 10% Muslims with the cultural product that we see coming out of your country? And it's because the establishment, favour them for some reason. And I can't really explain it. I mean, here's the royal family, Eid Mubarak, you know, like they as if they are themselves Muslims and not the head of the Church of England.
And Charles is the defender of faiths.
He did actually walk that back.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
oh, right,
he ended up getting crowned as the defender of the faith. He
okay.
wanted defender of faiths because Charles is a notorious Orientalist. He really loves Eastern religions for some reason. He seems to not care about Christianity at all.
Quick thing I'll just say about the 6%. I know as a percentage doesn't sound all that catastrophic, but I'd say 6% is still massive actually though. In real numbers, that's still millions and millions and millions of people.
It's 4 million.
Oh, right.
And
the real reality, people off the books and things don't respond to censuses. It'll be a few million more. Yeah. But we were talking about it in the kitchen earlier. At some point in the early 2000s or the 2010s at some point, I looked at the figure for the percentage of black people in America and was shocked to find out it was only sort of 12, 13%, something like that. Because if you watch TV and films and just the general culture, you think, oh, America's half black or something, wouldn't you? That's the impression you get. It's just not the case. I guess we've got the same thing with America. They think we're mostly Muslim now or something.
Well, they also think that most of our knife crimes committed by a white guy from a really good two-parent family that very stable, that's never done anything bad before. So
Mm.
it's just roaming bands of white boys stabbing people up in the streets for no reason.
It's what Netflix
choir
says.
boys all the way down.
Yeah.
So the exactly right. The representation of things is skewed in order to give people a false impression of what's actually happening. And of course, you'll see. I mean, Keir Starmer posted this about an hour ago on his Twitter. Someone posted it for him.
Eid Mubarak, everyone. It's really
Can't hear that.
fantastic
He's done another one.
to see you and to be saying that here in this room. I've been really proud that we've been able to host an iftar event here in number 10. To attend the big iftar in Westminster Hall. I'm wishing you Eid Mubarak is a really special moment. The day after the election last year that I stood outside the front door here on the steps of Downing Street and I said that this would be a government of service. Yes, look, this is my place of work, but the building, and I want you to get a sense of this, it really belongs to you as well. Because
Right, there we go. He couldn't be more thrilled to be wishing them fantastic Eid Mubarak.
And that's today, because he did the start of Ramadan, he did the end of Ramadan, and now he's also done this. And I actually looked 2 days ago, haven't looked since. He's not mentioned Lent once. Ash Wednesday, didn't mention that. It just seems that they're purposely ignoring Christian celebrations and traditions whilst promoting this and talking about this at every possible opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, he looks genuinely thrilled to be doing this.
Well, that was my question. There's one of two things is going on. Either he genuinely wants to do this and he's happy to do it, or it's under duress in some way and he's scared. Nah. It seems like the first one. Yeah. It very much seems like he's just on board with this politics.
Lindsay Hoyle, when he was like, "Look, I'm really worried about someone, an MP being murdered," he was scared. Right, yeah. You could tell the fear in him. No, Keir Starmer loves this. He loves to have his little Muslim constituency that he can say, "No, look, Eid Mubarak, I'm so thrilled. I love this is yours as well." It's like, oh, great, brilliant. I
do actually wonder if he's a troll, because he really does seem to troll everyone with and try and. I don't know, is he actually trying to upset everybody and demoralise every single British person in this country?
I think, honestly, you were right about these sort of traitorous liberals. And the thing is, he's so committed to this kind of universalist perspective. I don't think he sees it. I don't think he understands what he's doing.
And you would think that anyone who isn't on board with this way of thinking is a gross, terrible person, and screw them anyway. Yes. I imagine that's how it works in his mind.
Yeah, they're far right. And so the police, of course, deliberately named a man who set fire to the Quran, essentially criminalising and putting a target for vigilantes on this man's back, because burning the Quran, well, I mean, if you can see how the king, the government, and the institutions support Islam, well, why would they not do this?
For the record, am I right in saying that until any sort of true Islamophobia legislation is passed, it's not illegal to burn a Quran?
It's probably some sort of hate crime.
Yeah, probably.
You would think back a couple of 100 years when we were concerned about religious toleration, and we've gone back on all of that.
But burning any other book, let's say that was privately owned on private property, that's certainly not a crime.
No, you can burn as many copies of the Bible as you like.
Right.
Proper bonfire of Bibles. I'm sure Keir Starmer would support that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so and then finally, of course, we have the two-tier justice. Now, this is something that they had to walk back on, because Keir Starmer actually did threaten to legislate against this. But the point is, all of the Quangos in this country do believe that, in fact, the minority should be given privileges over the majority, and for some reason, okay, we won this battle, but the war's not over, and they're going to continue. And of course, Muslims are not exactly massively contributing to the economy. Not that that's really the thing I'm concerned about. As you can see here, Adan Hussein, MP, pointed out that Muslims generate at least 70 billion annually for the UK economy, which is 2% of the GDP for 6% of the population. So that's
yeah,
brutal community. No, it's absolutely brutal.
So they're sort of 66% underperforming?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yes, they are. So anyway, the point being, the country feels to a lot of people like it's being run for the benefit of Islam and minorities. And lots of people are upset about this. And so Professor David Betts at King's College London, their Department of War Studies, has been kind of sounding the alarm, saying, well, look, we're actually in a point now where all of the conditions for civil war are most ripe. And this is something maybe we should be thinking about, because people seem quite upset. And we saw the first signs of this at Southport. After the Southport riots, before any information about the stab was known, people started attacking mosques. Now, obviously, don't start attacking mosques. Obviously, this is bad. But what this indicates to us is that people have had enough. And that's why Keir Starmer came down on them like a ton of bricks and dedicated £30 million of your tax money to protecting mosques, because Keir Starmer loves Islam. But anyway, David Betts points out that rich and stable countries don't have civil wars. Legitimate democracies and strong autocracies don't have civil wars. The most unstable, he says, are moderately homogenous societies, particularly where there is a perceived change in the status of the titular majority or a significant minority which possesses the wherewithal to revolt on its own. And that's the important thing, the status. Now, if there's one thing I think a lot of British people feel at the moment, is that they are low status in their own country. Being English in England is not a prestigious thing. It's actually a kind of gross, scummy thing. Remember, what's that Labour MP who posted the picture of the English flags? Emily
Thornberry. Yeah.
Look at these English flags. So,
yeah. How dare you drive a white van and fly the St. George's Cross? How dare you?
Yeah.
Bigot.
Yeah, and we can see the general veneration for foreign things coming out of the institutions. And so he points out that, look, we are in fact very much in this kind of sweet spot for it. And I'm just going to quote a little bit at length, because this is just, I think, very interesting. He says, the peculiarity of contemporary Western multiculturalism relative to other examples of heterogeneous societies is threefold. Firstly, it is in the sweet spot with respect to theories of civil war causation. Specifically, the modern problem of coordination costs is diminished in a situation where white majorities, who are trending rapidly towards large minority status in some cases, live alongside multiple smaller minorities. Secondly, thus far, what has been practiced is a sort of asymmetric multiculturalism, in which the in-group preference, ethnic pride, and group solidarity, notably in voting, are acceptable for all groups except whites, for whom such things are considered to be resentful supremacist attitudes that are antithetical to the social order. And thirdly, because of the above, what has emerged is a perception that the status quo is invidiously unbalanced, which provides an argument for revolt on the part of the white majority that is rooted in stirring language of justice. From a strategic communications perspective, a morally inflected narrative which has a clearly articulated grievance, a plausible and urgent remedy, and a receptive, conscious community is powerful. Basically, what he's saying there is, it seems that the white people in Britain are going to say, you know what, we don't have to be second-class citizens in our own country. We've had enough. And so...
It just put me in mind everything you're reading there. The thing that kept popping into my mind was Goldstein's book in 1984. In the original novel, 1984, just before Winston Smith gets arrested, there's a few passages where he's reading from Goldstein's book, and it's that sort of thing that there's well, to boil it down, sort of an underclass, a working class, a middle class, and an upper class. And that the middle and the upper class swap around at various times, and the underclass just swap masters. But it doesn't have to be about purely politics. It can be about racial and ethnic and religious divides as well. It could easily be that, or has been in history, played out in real time a number of times. It's just the same old story. We've seen this through history, all throughout the world, all throughout the centuries, a number of times. This isn't sort of new. Right, it's not happened in Britain before.
No, this is it's not unremarkable in any way, shape or form.
But I've spent the last 5 years thinking, when are people actually going to have had enough to actually do something? And I am absolutely not condoning going out in the streets or doing anything stupid and rioting and burning anything. Not. But I just think, when are people actually going to stand up? I mean, people are still a little too afraid to even talk about things like that we talk about. They're a little afraid to even talk about it to their friends or their work colleagues, unless they know that their friends or work colleagues are kind of on the same page. So I do wonder. But then I also wonder, is it like problem, reaction, solution? Because all of this hasn't happened by accident. I don't think it's incompetence. I think it's been orchestrated. I think it's been facilitated. I think there's people making a lot of money allowing, illegals to come in, or building houses for, foreign imports. And so I do wonder if, and not cracking down on crime, things like that, just the basics of society. And so are they allowing this so that there is a reaction, so they can really bring in a solution like 1984, where it's surveillance everywhere, where they say, right, well, we can go through every single one of your text messages just on like the little inkling that you might have said something bad against the government, and therefore you might be, a potential rioter. So I don't know whether it's kind of been planned, or whether, it is just a very organic build-up of upset.
I'm of the opinion that these people are doctrinaire liberals, and they genuinely believe in the things that they're saying. And so what this means is that they view foreign peoples to have as much of a claim to Britain as the British people do, right? And so when the British people, in the sort of old world thought of, well, hang on, this is our country, not your country, what are you doing here? Try to assert that. That's viewed as not only racism, but something tantamount to genocide, to say that these people have no claim to our country. And so they freak out about this. And so they now are like, oh God, we're sat on this far right pressure cooker, and we've just got to keep it all together, or else it explodes and loads of people have their human rights violated, is what they think.
I think it's sort of deliberate malevolence, whether it's Tony Blair or Rishi Sunak. Very deliberate, not just like my liberal principles have accidentally led to this.
I don't know, man.
I don't know either. I don't know for sure.
It could be either one.
But I think the establishment are a little different from the everyday liberals, like the head teacher that I mentioned, because they all have been completely and utterly indoctrinated through everything, through schools, through college, through media, music, TV, film. Everything's kind of indoctrinated people to this point where they're calling this Netflix show a documentary. It's like,
to be honest with you, I accept it. I accept that it's a documentary, but it's a longer conversation.
On the malevolence thing, real quick. I mean, you take our current Justice Secretary, Mahmood. What's her name? Something Mahmood. So anyway, her two-tier thing.
Yeah.
You can't take that as sort of an accidental byproduct of liberalism.
She was against it. She objected to the two-tier thing. She's the one who the day it came out.
Doesn't make any sense. So who's putting it forward then through Parliament?
It's not going through Parliament. That's the thing.
Not now.
So the Sentencing Council is a quango, right? And what they do is provide authoritative guidance to judges, and so they say, look, the judges aren't legally bound by it, but they take it in the same sort of way as if, when David Starkey says what the right wing needs to think about, everyone goes, oh, if David Starkey saying it, we're going to listen, right? It's that kind of authority. The Romans would have called it auctoritas, I think.
So back in the day, didn't Starmer go to meetings of the Sentencing Council? Was he part of it?
He probably was. I actually don't know.
Because I do know that he went to 21 meetings of the Sentencing Council who decided that not all child sex offenders should go to jail. That's a little factoid that I do know, that he was involved with the Sentencing Council then.
It absolutely makes sense. As head of the CPS, I'm sure they work hand in glove.
I'm sure they do. But the point is, it's not necessarily a legal requirement. It's just an authoritative thing. And Starmer, but Shabana, I think her name is Mahmood, she actually came out against it because it looks really bad. I don't think it's because morally she's opposed to it. I was
going to say.
It's because we're already calling him two-tier Keir, and if he stands idle on this, well, then that just cements it. But anyway, so the reason I talk about all of this is because this line of thinking that David Betts has been promoting and properly putting into the consciousness of the British people, and rightly so, I think, is finally arriving at the sort of Tory wets, right? They're finally getting it and going, hang on a second, have we been party to the biggest betrayal in all of British history that's turned our country into an absolute sewer and has enraged huge amounts of people who live here? And it's like, yes, Tim Stanley, you have been party to that, right? And so I'm just gonna read from his article because, of course, you can imagine how he lands on this. So he says, I now fear that Britain is heading for an open sectarian conflict, possibly war, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. Well, I mean, you didn't have to be party to it for the last 14 years, did you, Tim? But anyway, here's a snapshot of what I'm hearing. He says, on one night in Westminster, I met someone who argued for voluntary repatriation 2 generations back. A Labour activist told me we must re-educate Muslims, and Jacob Rees-Mogg debated me on GB News said Britain should take 0 refugees. I spluttered a reply about the Good Samaritan and staggered off to bed, confused and depressed. These are the sort of libs I hate the most, right? It's one thing, the woke globalist libs who are like, look, I kind of hate you and I want to destroy your culture. Like, okay, that's great. I kind of hate you too and I want to destroy globalism, right? That's, at least we're both honest. Tim Stanley is, I'm going to pretend I don't hate you and want to destroy your culture, but I'm going to do everything that will destroy your culture and indicate that I hate you, right? I will be the guy who opens the gates to the barbarians. And I'll tell you, no, I'm not doing that. What's the problem?
And no amount of cognitive dissonance will make any difference.
No. Anyway, so he says, for 2 decades, I've argued for controlling immigration, and successive governments, including Jacob's, increased it. So, yeah, I'm sure you have. So suddenly I've woken up in a land where everyone wants to reduce or even reverse it, and they've leapfrogged me into a pool of dark resentment. Nigel Farage is mocked as a dhimmi for appointing a Muslim chair to his party and looks nervous of his own supporters. Even Labour has turned on the Sentencing Council, which, for all its faults, was trying to fix a genuine racial disparity. See what I mean? Like, fixing racial disparities is not the job of justice in this country, right? The job of justice in this country is to make sure that criminals get what they deserve, right? There's the reason he says it's black people who tend to get longer sentences than whites, not the other way around. Okay, well, let's ask about recidivism, right? Let's ask about repeated criminality. Who is more likely to be a repeated criminal and therefore incur a longer sentence due to their past history of crime, right? It's just the statistics. I'm not trying to say that one group's good and one group's bad. What I'm saying is this is why you're getting these effects. If one group doesn't have a particular history of recidivism in their community and the other group does, well, then you can expect differential outcomes, because that's what justice requires, a difference in treatment because of what that person has done. What they deserve is what justice is, not making sure that black and white sentences are exactly equal. That's not justice, and in fact, that can be deliberate injustice, actually. But that's why Keir Starmer let out a load of people and then locked up the Southport rioters. It's about social justice.
Justice is supposed to be colourblind, actually.
Yeah, it's supposed to be blind to all of things.
The personification of justice is always a woman with a sword and scales, with a blindfold.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, rip that blindfold off and make sure you discriminate against the whites.
Yeah.
Okay. Weird.
He goes on to say, nearly 200,000 YouTubers have watched an interview given to Louise Perry by David Betts, a professor of conflict studies in King's College London. Betts argues that conditions for a failed state we ordinarily apply overseas are now found here. Frayed social contract, failing trust, polarisation. Into this mix, Britain injected multiculturalism, encouraging millions to move here without expecting integration. If you think fear of the other is a human instinct, the policy was mad to begin with. Okay, why did we do this then? Why did the Conservatives sign off on this? Because they're a bunch of wet libs themselves. Over the past 30 years, liberal institutions, he says, combine it with other economic decline and you invite ethnic competition over services and jobs. Yeah, and this is where we are, right? I grew up in a post-colonial world where we said, I don't see race, and honestly, if naively, meant it. That's great. You, the white liberals, honestly and naively meant it. And so what you did is imported people who were not white liberals, who didn't say it, didn't honestly and sincerely mean it, and you thought that they would just get along exactly the same as the rest of us. This hasn't happened. You are a fool. You've all been fools, and you've inflicted this not only on me, which is fine, I'm 45 years old, I don't really need your protection, but you've inflicted it on my children. You've inflicted this on my grandchildren when I have them. You've inflicted this on future generations. This is going to age very badly, is what I'm saying, right? So anyway, I'm going to carry on because this is just remarkable, right? So he says, over the past 30 years, liberal institutions have taught us to see race again by stressing the wonders of diversity so persistently that some white people feel that the state has actively taken a side against them. It's only because they seem to just do nothing but praise minorities and condemn the majority. Ancient binding concepts such as equality before the law ring hollow. The latest police race action plan openly rejects the principle of treating everyone the same in favour of equality of police outcomes. A situation in which millions believe the cops are not impartial public servants but an occupying force is the headline metric of state failure. Mainland Britain has become Ulster. In fact, the low-level insurgency has already begun. Ireland has seen arson at asylum hotels. Last year, Britain had riots. Why did Number 10 insist that so many be thrown into jail? Betts notes that while Islamic terrorism is more lethal than far-right terrorism, there are only 4 million Muslims, whereas there are around 50 million whites. Were the latter group radicalised, things might go south very fast. Hence, some in the security forces clearly regard white Britons as the emergent threat. Betts sees no solution, so suggests we prepare for anarchy. I'm more concerned about fascism.
Yeah, was that the take? Am I getting it wrong?
No, that's
he's worried about civil war, but he's worried about the reaction to...
Yeah. Civil war's coming. I'm worried about fascism. Okay. Amazing. Amazing take. Well, is fascism one of the top 10 priorities that you have in the country? Are you afraid of fascism?
I'm trying to take it all in. I'm thinking, gosh, I mean, what can I say? No, I haven't been. I see. There was one thing where he did say that I think growing up when I was younger, I was just staring at it really like that, trying to figure out what he meant. But I feel like when I grew up, my mum's from the Philippines. No, like he says there, no one really did see race. But I do think the last few decades, it's really, really been pushed on us to notice it. And as you said, my mum wanted to be part of British culture. She didn't want to take her own culture. She didn't want to stay in a group with all Filipinos and then do their own thing. She wanted to integrate into society. And because they keep on going on about diversity and we must accept this, we must accept that, people have gone into their own little, communities, and they don't integrate, and it has made a noticeable difference. And then we're being pushed by the media, by music, by entertainment to look at everybody's race and color and try and celebrate everything except white people. That I do think it's been pushed so that it is more noticeable now.
Yeah, it's very, very much so. And so his concern is fascism rather than the dispossession of the British from their own country.
It's very, very often the case that you read in mainstream media, in the Mail, online, or something like that, or the Telegraph, something that seems that it's being reasonable and honest and truthful with what's going on, and then at the end, the twist is, but the right is the problem.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's literally this.
Do you remember the clashes between Pakistanis and Indians in Leicester
a
year or two ago? And do you remember in the end, it all stopped, and the violence stopped, and they managed to all agree that let's not let EDL types get involved. They're really, that was really the problem from the beginning.
But this is the thing.
Wow, really? How was that happen?
And it's the same. It's like when you go into London, you see the Palestine flags flying everywhere, and then you see the Ukraine flags everywhere, and everyone's swinging those around. But you take the British flag, or you take the St. George's, and you're this far right bigot.
Yeah.
It's mad to me.
That's exactly.
It's like, I remember one of my friends, she's American, and she came with American friends. They were going to have a little tour around the Tower of London. I think they were going into the Houses of Parliament, and they had their little British flags that they bought from one of those little shops where you buy souvenirs.
Yeah.
And they were told, like, you can't bring them in. You have to leave them outside. You can't bring it. And they couldn't understand it because Americans fly their American flags. They're all patriotic. They were doing little tongue-in-cheek things with their little flags, with their British flags. But it was mad, and it was crazy to them. And it's crazy to me that, because I see the Ukrainian flags everywhere around.
And the Palestine flags.
It's horrible. It's symptomatic of a deep, deep problem in society that's the case.
So he's just, we'll finish on this one thing here, because this is just fascinating, right? So he says, I'm more concerned about fascism. We're not far away from a politician running for office as explicitly anti-Muslim. Well, we've got 5 who are explicitly Muslim. We've got 5 MPs who are explicitly Muslim. They ran on the pro-Palestine platform. They want airports in Mirpur. They are explicitly and avowedly Muslim, and that's why they were elected. Is it a surprise that you're going to get people who are anti-Muslim? And is it wrong that you would get people who are anti-Muslim? Because he said, I'm really worried about sectarianism coming to Britain. We've got 5 sectarian MPs already. Is it any wonder that the native population might be like, oh, right, we need our own sectarian MPs?
And dozens more that are sympathetic.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Fascism as well, just really quick to say, the actual word fascism.
It's childish.
It's so far removed from, like, reform, let's say, or reclaim, or something, or David Curtin. It's like, you're not using the word right. It's not fascism.
No, it's nothing.
It's nothing like it. It's barely nationalism, but anyway.
Yeah.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.